Bill Connelly here with Ivan Maisel and Mark Schlabach. We are talking about our favorite college football seasons. You can read our picks below, but really the question is what makes a favorite season? What makes something memorable and what sticks in your mind the most? Mark, you go ahead and start.
Yeah, Bill, I think it's controversy. I think it's what makes college football so special is the controversy. The unexpected. And I think star power and big name coaches. I went with 1984 as my number one pick, or among my top picks, just because BYU, the WAC champion, won a national championship. You had Doug Flutie's Hail Mary. You had Maryland's improbable comeback against Miami. Hurricanes were on the wrong end of two incredible finishes in college football history that season. But, I think the number one ranked team in the preseason poll lost in week one, and several other top-ranked teams lost to unranked teams throughout the entire season.
Yeah, I feel like we immediately went for not like the best seasons, but what made the best stories because we're writers, right? And I did the total eBay panic the minute Bill mentioned 1990 because it was such a train wreck of a season. I went, oh yeah, okay, well 2007, that's a bigger train wreck. So that's not. I think the best season. It was probably the most entertaining season I've ever covered. Best to me is a 2005, which was such a great finish, or a 1995 when Nebraska was so dominant. But it's all in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, I think I went for chaos. That was pretty clear. Starting with 90 and on down. I think other than 2008, that seemed to be the theme for most of my seasons. And it's funny because if you get that every year, it's you need a balance of power to know when that's been completely overthrown. And so we get a 2007 or a 1990 about once every 5-10 years. I think that would be lovely. It's been a while now. 2013 was about as close as we got with Auburn doing crazy Auburn things. But that 90 season, you had Miami losing to BYU. You had Notre Dame losing at home to unranked Stanford. You had Michigan losing at home to unranked Michigan State. You had Colorado on the benefiting from two of the wildest calls you'll ever see, or most memorable calls you'll ever see, and winning the national title despite losing to Tennessee and tying with Illinois. That's a mouthful of a season right there. I don't know if it can touch 2007, but it's all about chaos for me.
The other way around, they tied Tennessee and lost to Illinois, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, well, either way, Illinois was involved in a blemish for a national champion, and it wasn't the only blemish. So it was an absolutely
Red Grange was no longer there, so it was
or Butkus, yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about pure greatness, I think you could make an argument for 1988 because you had the undefeated Notre Dame season. They beat number 1, number 2, number 3. You had Barry Sanders running for over 2,500 yards, 2,800 if you include the bowl games. You had guys like the Boz, Derek Brooks. Deion Sanders led the country in punt returns. Rocket Ishmael led the country in kickoff returns. Mike Gundy led the country in completion percentage. It was a fun season. It's really I think it was the first year, I was probably 15 years old. It was probably the first time I followed a complete season through and through because I grew up a Notre Dame fan.
Well, and that, I think, hits a reason for some of our picks. I was struck. I don't remember the 80s as being particularly memorable, and Bill's probably too young to remember them anyway. But, we spent a lot of time in the 80s with our picks. I picked 1973 for the same reason, just an incredible year with Alabama and Notre Dame finishing undefeated and playing for the first time in the Sugar Bowl for the national championship, and Ohio State and Michigan both finishing 10-0-1 or but finishing undefeated with one loss. And, part of that is why we love college football is what hooked us at an early age.
Yeah, I noticed, we picked like 2/3 of the 80s out of these 15 seasons. And the only thing I can think of, number one, the balance of power to get shaken up. So you had some new powers and all that, but you also had football on television. Like I was wondering if that was part of it. Is that that was after the Board of Regents versus Oklahoma or NCAA versus Board of Regents, and I wonder if just the simple fact that we have more games to remember from that period affected that at all. But it was a fun decade. There's no question about that.
Well, and that's why I did throw in 1935 for our older readers, but which, of course, no television and probably all that was filmed was newsreels, but a really dramatic season in a number of ways, and gave birth to one of the great Notre Dame comeback myths, as well as gave birth to Dan Jenkins, the football writer. So
That's right.
to me, that was a special year.
Yeah, the 60 was my my token older pick, just because, well, because I'm a Missouri person and therefore I already knew a lot about it. But that was a pretty chaotic year for that period of time as well. But we start to remember in the 80s apparently, and that colors everything after that. Any final thoughts at all?
I mean, I'm still surprised the greatest season of all, 1980, didn't make the list, but that's just me.
What happened in 1980 there, Mark?
I think Herschel Walker was a freshman. That's about all I remember.
And should have won the Heisman, right?
They should have won the Heisman.
Yeah. Thank you.
3 of them.
Yeah. I just tee them up for you and you hit them out.
That's right. That was the worst Herschel team too. So that was the strangest season of all time. You should have picked a number 1.
There are a couple others. The last 2 ended. I think Vince Dooley still remembers how the last 2 ended.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.